Good morning/afternoon/evening, brothers and sisters. I believe that this is not just another month. It is a divine moment in time. July is not just the 7th month of the year. It's the month of completion, transition, and most importantly, vindication. Some of you have been praying in silence, walking in obedience when it seemed easier to quit, enduring the slander, the false accusations, the rejection, the delay. But I came to tell you this: God has seen it all. And July will be the month where God will publicly vindicate you. Let me declare this over your life today. This is your season of justice. Your tears were not in vain. Your faithfulness will not go unrewarded. You may be in a place right now where you feel invisible. You've been showing up every day, doing what's right, staying consistent, loving others, serving quietly, and sacrificing deeply. And yet it feels like nobody notices. You give, but few give back. You love, but it's not always returned. You've forgiven again and again, only to be misunderstood or taken for granted. But I came to remind you today, God sees what others cannot see. There is not a single tear you've cried in secret that went unnoticed. There's not a prayer you whispered in the dark, not a time you chose humility when your flesh craved revenge, not a moment of restraint when you could have spoken out, that God has not recorded in heaven. The scripture tells us that He keeps our tears in a bottle. That means He is a God who cares deeply about every emotion you feel, every pain you carry, and every injustice you've faced. When people overlook you, God sees the full picture. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. While others are distracted by the noise of the world, by performance, status, reputation, God is examining what no eye can see, your character, your motives, your obedience. And when He sees you choosing righteousness in the face of rejection, when He sees you clinging to faith in the midst of discouragement, He takes note. It may feel like you're being passed by. Others are getting the opportunities. Others are being celebrated. Others are being promoted. You wonder, God, did you forget me? But He hasn't. He's just working behind the scenes in ways you can't imagine. God's delay is never God's denial. And just because people don't see the weight you carry doesn't mean God doesn't. Sometimes vindication doesn't look like lightning from the sky. Sometimes vindication begins with God simply saying, I saw that. When no one else noticed, you stood up for what was right. When no one thanked you for staying late, when no one recognized the kindness you extended, God said, I saw that. And that's enough to keep going. Because when the time is right, He will bring it all to light. He will reward you openly for what was done in secret. You don't have to shout to be seen. You don't have to post your pain on social media to be validated. You don't have to chase people's attention or approval. God sees, and when the Creator of the universe sees you, you are not invisible. You are chosen, you are acknowledged, you are held in high regard in the courts of heaven, even if earth never claps for you. This month, this very July, may be the moment when the hidden becomes seen, not because you forced it, not because you demanded it, but because God decided it was time. Time for the truth to surface. Time for your quiet labor to be rewarded. Time for the seeds you sowed in tears to produce a harvest of joy. And here's what I love about God's vindication. He doesn't just see what was done to you. He sees how you responded. Anyone can be gracious when life is going well, but it takes real strength to be gracious when you're being wronged. It takes supernatural power to bless those who curse you, to pray for those who spitefully use you, and to walk away from the temptation to defend yourself when your heart is being misjudged. That's the kind of strength that God honors. That's the kind of strength that heaven rewards. God doesn't need to be informed. He's not unaware. He doesn't need anyone to advocate for you because He is your advocate. In fact, the more you resist the urge to defend yourself, the more room you give Him to step in and do it better. There's a vindication coming in this season that will speak louder than anything you could have said. People will begin to recognize not just what you've done, but who you really are. Not because you demanded to be seen, but because God is now unveiling what He's always known. You may not see the full picture right now, and that's okay. You're not called to understand every season. You're called to trust through it. So keep walking with integrity. Keep serving with joy. Keep loving without conditions.
The eyes of God are on you, and when He sees what others overlook, you can be confident in this. He will never waste your faithfulness, so if you feel tired, don't give up. If you feel invisible, don't retreat.
If you're wondering whether it's worth it, if staying silent, staying kind, staying faithful even when others fail you, hear this, it is worth it. Because God sees what others cannot see, and that is the first sign that vindication is already on the way.
July is not the end of your story. It's the turning point, the month where the unseen becomes seen, the moment where heaven speaks louder than the rumors, the season where God shows the world who He's been watching all along. And that person, dear one, is you. When people think of vindication, they often imagine a moment of revenge, a time when those who wronged us get what's coming to them. They think of retaliation, exposure, or justice served cold.
But God's version of vindication is something completely different. It's not about watching others fall. It's not about rubbing your victory in their faces. It's not even about proving your enemies wrong.
God's vindication is about restoration. It's about taking what was lost, what was broken, what was misjudged, and making it whole again in a way that brings glory to Him, not pain to others. There's a part of all of us that wants to be understood, to be heard, to be believed, especially when we've been lied about or mistreated. There's something in the human soul that aches when you're blamed for something you didn't do, when your loyalty is questioned, or when people assume the worst about you. And in those moments, we often want vindication to look like this. Let the truth come out and let everyone see how wrong they were. We imagine God pulling back the curtain and exposing every lie, every false assumption, every word spoken behind our back. But God's vindication is gentler than that. It's deeper than public proof. It's more powerful than temporary applause. It's a healing that touches your soul, not your ego. God is not in the business of humiliating people just because they misunderstood you. He is in the business of healing you so deeply that you no longer need their apology to walk in freedom. Vindication from God doesn't always start with a spotlight. It often begins in silence.
A whisper in your spirit that says, I know the truth. I saw it all. I'm restoring what they damaged. I'm redeeming what they tried to destroy, and I'm doing it in a way that won't just bless you. It will transform you. Sometimes the greatest vindication is peace. Not the kind the world gives, but the kind only God can offer. The kind that lets you sleep soundly while your name is still in people's mouths. The kind that lets you smile genuinely while your character is still under question. The kind that lets you move forward even when no one said sorry. That's restoration. That's divine vindication. You see, if vindication were just about revenge, it would leave you empty. Because revenge feeds pride, but it doesn't heal wounds. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It might feel satisfying for a moment, but it will only leave you worse off. God doesn't want you to just feel better for a moment. He wants you to be whole. And that requires more than someone else being exposed. It requires you being restored. This is why God's way takes time, because He's not just fixing what they broke. He's rebuilding you into someone stronger, wiser, softer, and more anointed than before. He's not putting a bandage over your pain. He's doing surgery on your soul. And when He's done, the version of you that walks out of this process will be so transformed that even you will be amazed. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and forgotten in prison. If anyone had a right to seek revenge, it was Joseph. But when God finally vindicated him, when He lifted him from the prison to the palace, Joseph didn't seek to punish those who wronged him. He wept, he forgave, and he said something powerful. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That is vindication. When the very thing meant to destroy you becomes the pathway to your destiny, when your pain becomes your platform, when your scars become your story, and your story becomes someone else's healing, vindication is restoration.
It means you don't have to prove yourself to people anymore. You don't have to defend yourself in every room you're not in. You don't have to walk with a chip on your shoulder, hoping someone will acknowledge your worth.
Because once God restores your soul, once he confirms your identity, once he heals what they shattered, you no longer need approval from those who wounded you. You're walking in wholeness, and wholeness speaks louder than any defense. This July, I believe some of you are going to see this kind of vindication. Not the kind you imagined, but the kind you actually need. You won't get even. You'll get healed. You won't get revenge, you'll get revelation.
And you'll look back not with bitterness, but with clarity, realizing that the situation that hurt you also helped you. It positioned you. It matured you. It stripped away the pride and the performance and brought you into intimacy with God that nothing else could have produced. That's restoration. That's God's justice. That's vindication with power. So if you're waiting for someone to apologize, stop holding your breath. If you're hoping for public validation, release it. You don't need people to see what God already knows. You just need to keep your heart soft, your spirit surrendered, and your faith rooted in the one who restores. Because when God vindicates you, you won't rise out of anger, you'll rise out of healing. You'll rise into purpose. You'll rise with grace, and you'll rise with a story that no one can take from you. And that, my friend, is real vindication. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is wait, especially when you know you've been faithful.
You've prayed, you've obeyed, you've sacrificed, you've done everything you could, and yet the doors still haven't opened. The phone still hasn't rung, the opportunity hasn't arrived, the breakthrough hasn't come. And you begin to wonder if God has passed you by. You begin to question if maybe you misunderstood the promise. Maybe it wasn't for you after all. Maybe the delay is God's way of saying no. But let me tell you something with certainty. Delay is not denial. Delay is preparation. When God delays something, it's not because he's forgotten about you. It's not because you're disqualified. It's because he loves you too much to give you something you're not ready to carry. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. He's shaping your character, refining your motives, and aligning your surroundings so that when the door finally opens, you're not only ready to walk through it, you're ready to thrive on the other side. There are things God wants to give you that are too heavy for the version of you that exists today. And the waiting season is the gym. It's where your spiritual muscles are built. It's where your faith is stretched. It's where your roots grow deep, so that when the storm comes, you're not shaken. If God gave it to you too soon, it would crush you. But when he gives it to you at the right time, it will elevate you. Look at David. He was anointed king as a teenager, but he didn't sit on the throne until years later. What was he doing during that delay? Running, hiding, serving, learning. God wasn't rejecting him. God was preparing him. And when the crown finally came, David didn't just have the title. He had the heart of a king. That's what preparation does. It turns potential into power. It turns calling into capacity. And it only happens in the space where nothing seems to be happening. You see, we often confuse silence for absence. We think if we can't hear God, he's not working, but he is. He's working on you. He's working on them. He's working on it. He's shifting hearts, aligning paths, and orchestrating details you don't even know are connected to your destiny. What feels like nothing is actually everything. It's God setting the stage, writing the script, preparing the moment that will make everything make sense. Don't let the enemy lie to you in the waiting room. Don't let him convince you that the delay means God changed his mind. God is not man. He doesn't lie and he doesn't forget. If he said it, he will do it, but he will do it when the time is right, not when you're frustrated into obedience, not when you finally try to force it, but when he knows that your heart is ready to carry the weight of the blessing without losing the intimacy of his presence. There's a version of you that God is building in the delay, a version that doesn't panic under pressure, that doesn't chase approval, that doesn't seek revenge. A version that can walk in power with humility, in favor with discipline, in abundance with gratitude. That version of you is being forged in the quiet, in the hidden, in the overlooked. And it's that version that will be able to sustain the blessing when it arrives. You don't have to understand the delay to trust the one who allowed it. Sometimes the only thing God is asking from you in the waiting is your obedience. Will you stay faithful when no one sees it? Will you worship when the promise hasn't come? Will you show up, not because it's exciting, but because it's what He asked of you? That kind of obedience builds something in you that no platform, no paycheck, no applause can ever offer. It builds spiritual endurance, and endurance is what will carry you through the blessing and beyond. Some of the most beautiful things God will do in your life won't arrive when you expect them. They will arrive when He knows you've been made strong enough to hold them, wise enough to manage them, and humble enough to give Him the glory for them. That's why July matters. It's not just another month. It's a checkpoint, a moment when God is saying, I haven't forgotten you. I'm still working. Don't walk away now. Don't abort the process. The delay is proof that what's coming is significant. God doesn't waste time, and He's not wasting yours. He's investing it, because He's investing in you. So instead of asking, why is it taking so long? Start asking, what are you building in me during this time? That simple shift in perspective can change everything. Because then you stop watching the clock and start watching your character grow. You stop begging for escape and start embracing the process. You stop fearing the silence and start trusting the shepherd. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. And when the time is right, when your hands are ready, when your heart is healed, when the soil is fertile, God will do it suddenly. And it won't feel delayed at all. It will feel right on time, because He's always on time, especially in the delay. There is a kind of favor that doesn't require revenge, a kind of vindication that doesn't depend on confrontation, a kind of restoration that speaks louder than words, and that is when God prepares a table before you in the presence of those who opposed you, not after they leave, not when they're out of the picture, not when everything is peaceful, no, right in their presence, right where they doubted you, right where they rejected you, right where they thought you wouldn't recover. That's where He sets the table. There's something so powerful about that image. Not a table of survival, not scraps, not a little blessing tucked away in secret. No, this is a feast, a royal banquet, a public demonstration of the private faithfulness you walked in. And He does it not to shame your enemies, but to show them what happens when someone chooses to trust Him in the dark. To show them what happens when someone keeps their heart clean, keeps their hands off revenge, and keeps walking in obedience even when it's hard. You didn't have to fight your way to the table. You didn't have to manipulate your way to the table. You didn't have to scheme, post, beg, or force. You just stayed faithful. You just stayed planted. You just kept walking with integrity while others ran with assumption. And because of that, God said, I will set the table. He didn't say you would set it. He didn't say you would earn it. He said He would prepare it. That means the blessing that's coming in this season is not something you built. It's something He's arranging. You see, the presence of your enemies doesn't cancel your blessing. It confirms it. Their presence means the table is almost ready, because God will use even your opposition to stage your elevation. He will use the critics, the slanderers, the ones who tried to hold you down, to create the perfect backdrop for your unveiling. Not because you need an audience, but because He wants to make it clear this wasn't your doing, this was His hand, this was His justice, this was His favor, and no one, no rumor, no betrayal, no rejection can stop what He's about to serve. This is not about gloating. This is not about saying, look at me now. It's about letting your life be a quiet testimony, a living table that says, even when it hurt, I didn't quit. Even when I was lied on, I didn't fight dirty. Even when I was overlooked, I didn't lower my standard. And God saw it. He saw what they didn't see. He saw how you kept loving. He saw how you kept showing up. He saw how you wanted to retaliate but chose restraint. And now He says, watch me honor that. Watch me turn that kind of heart into something no man can explain. Some of you have been walking through a season where it feels like you're surrounded by critics, surrounded by pressure, surrounded by silence, But what if the very fact that you're surrounded means God is about to serve something? What if the enemies aren't there to intimidate you, but to witness the goodness of the God you refuse to walk away from? David didn't say, God removed my enemies. He said, God prepared a table before me in their presence. That means the table came while the tension was still there. That means the feast was served while the opposition was watching. You don't need all your problems to go away before God blesses you. He's not waiting for the perfect conditions. He's looking for the right heart. And if your heart has stayed tender even under pressure, then the table is already being set. Let the others talk, let them assume, let them walk away. You don't need to correct every narrative. You don't need to chase every lie. You just need to stay in position, stay at the table, keep your eyes on the one preparing the feast, because when God sets a table, it's not rushed, it's not sloppy, it's not halfway, it's abundant, it's intentional. It's filled with what you need and more. Peace will be there, joy will be there, clarity will be there, restoration will be there, and yes, vindication will be there too, not as a weapon but as a witness. Your enemies won't be able to deny it. They may never apologize. They may never admit they were wrong, but they'll see it. They'll see that what God did in you was bigger than what they said about you. They'll see that God's hand on your life is not up for debate. And while you're sitting at that table, your spirit won't be bitter. It will be grateful, because you'll realize that if it hadn't been for the pain, you might not have found the depth. If it hadn't been for the betrayal, you might not have grown in discernment. If it hadn't been for the rejection, you might not have discovered that God is enough. He's not just preparing a table for your comfort. He's preparing it to reveal his character, to show the world and to remind you that he is the one who lifts. He is the one who restores. He is the one who vindicates, and he will do it not in secret, but right there, in front of the very ones who said it wouldn't happen. The table is coming, not because you demanded it, but because God promised it. And when it's set, there will be no doubt. Only God could have done this. There will always be moments in life when you are tempted to respond from the heat of your emotions. When something someone says cuts you deep, when betrayal stings, when rejection feels personal, when the injustice is so clear and the pain so raw that every part of you wants to react, clap back, defend yourself, or let them feel a fraction of what you've carried in silence. But that's the exact moment where your spiritual maturity is tested, not by how loud you speak, but by how much peace you keep. When life presses you, what comes out reveals what's inside, and God is more interested in what's forming in you than what's happening around you. Responding emotionally might feel good for a moment, but it often costs you more than you realize. Emotion-driven reactions can burn bridges, damage your witness, block your blessings, and prolong your breakthrough. But when you respond spiritually, through discernment, restraint, and wisdom, you stay aligned with God's rhythm, and that opens doors no argument ever could. This is not about pretending you don't feel pain. God is not asking you to numb yourself or suppress what's real. No, He's inviting you to process it with Him before projecting it on others, to bring the emotion to the altar, not to the argument, to let your tears be your prayer, not your defense. When you respond spiritually, you are choosing power over impulse, and that kind of strength comes from your time with Him, not from your ability to control a room. You must remember, the enemy loves emotional reactions. He thrives on chaos, confusion, offense, and retaliation. That's how he traps people, by baiting them into battles they were never called to fight. He doesn't have to destroy you if he can distract you. And one of the easiest ways he does that is through your emotions. He whispers lies that inflame your anger, your fear, your insecurity, your pride. He'll provoke you to respond too quickly, to speak too soon, to post what you should have prayed about. But the Spirit of God leads differently. The Spirit slows you down. The Spirit brings clarity. The Spirit doesn't silence your emotions. It sanctifies them. Some of the greatest victories you'll ever have won't come from what you said, but from what you chose not to say. From what you surrendered in prayer instead of proving in public. From how you walked away with peace instead of staying to argue for pride. There's a kind of power in silence that only the spiritually mature understand.
Jesus showed us this when he stood before Pilate and the religious leaders, falsely accused, mocked, misunderstood. He didn't retaliate. He didn't give a fiery response. He stood in truth, quiet, unshaken.
Because he knew who he was. He didn't need to prove it. That's where God wants to take you. Not to a place of emotional numbness, but to a place of emotional authority. Where your emotions serve your spirit, not sabotage it. Where you no longer have to chase people down to fix narratives. Where you no longer feel the need to win every battle. Where your first reaction isn't panic, but prayer. Where you say, God, before I move, before I speak, before I respond, what do you want to do through me in this moment?
Responding spiritually doesn't mean being passive. It means being powerful with purpose. It means knowing when to speak, how to speak, and what to say. It means not letting the moment shape you, but letting the Spirit guide you through the moment. And that kind of guidance requires intimacy. You can't respond spiritually if you're not living spiritually. That's why your private time with God matters so much. Your ability to respond with discernment in public comes from how deeply you've surrendered in private. Some of you are on the edge of something great, but the enemy will try to pull you out of alignment by stirring up emotional situations. He'll send people to poke at your past, test your patience, stir up unresolved pain. And if you're not grounded in the Spirit, you'll react and forfeit the next level. But this time you're not going to take the bait. You're not going to let them pull you out of character. You're going to respond like someone who knows they are chosen, anointed, appointed, and covered. You're going to respond like someone who knows the battle is the Lord's. That's what July is about. It's not just about watching God vindicate you. It's about maturing into someone who doesn't need validation to feel whole. Someone who doesn't need revenge to feel justified. Someone who doesn't need to win the moment because they've already surrendered the outcome to God. And that surrender gives you the calm, the focus, the grace to respond with spiritual authority, not emotional instability. When you operate like that, you don't just walk through the fire. You carry peace through it. You shift the atmosphere. You confuse the enemy. You rise above offense. And you position yourself for favor that can't be faked, manipulated, or rushed. Favor that's birthed in the secret place, watered with patience, and revealed in divine timing. That's what happens when you choose to respond spiritually. You don't just survive the battle, you grow from it. And what once would have made you spiral now makes you stronger. So the next time life presses you, don't let your emotions lead. Let the Spirit of God rise up in you. That's where the real victory begins. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned the wisdom of stillness. You've learned that not every move needs to be announced. Not every revelation needs to be posted. Not every word from God needs to be explained to people who aren't ready to hear it. There is a sacredness in silence, a strength in the hidden place. Because when God begins to move in your life, when he speaks promises into your spirit that don't yet make sense in the natural, you have to protect what he said. Until the fulfillment comes, it is human nature to want to share. To want to tell someone what God showed you, to find validation, encouragement, or even just someone who says, "Yes, I believe that for you." But you must understand, some things are too holy to be handled by human opinion. Some seasons require secrecy, not secrecy rooted in shame or fear, but in reverence, reverence for the process, reverence for the unfolding, because premature exposure can invite unnecessary warfare. People can't attack what they don't see. And the enemy can't steal what hasn't yet been spoken into the open. Think of the way God works. He conceals his most powerful works in silence. A seed grows in the dark. A baby forms in the womb. Jesus rose in a tomb before anyone saw him alive. God moves in stillness, in hidden places, in silence that is often mistaken for inactivity. But while you're waiting, while you're trusting, while you're holding that word in your heart, he's doing more than you realize. And if you'll keep quiet long enough, you'll see it unfold without having to prove a thing. There are moments when you want to speak, not out of confidence, but out of pressure, because you're tired of waiting. You're tired of people misunderstanding you. You want to shout what God said just to remind them you haven't lost your mind. But faith doesn't need a microphone. It needs obedience. Sometimes faith looks like quietly building while others are bragging.
It looks like praying behind the scenes while others are performing on stages. It looks like choosing not to explain yourself, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Look at Mary. When the angel told her she would carry the Messiah, she didn't run around telling everyone. She didn't try to convince her neighbors or even explain herself to her relatives. The Bible says she pondered these things in her heart. That's what spiritual maturity does.
It understands the weight of the word and chooses to carry it in silence, rather than expose it to voices that don't carry the same faith. Sometimes you've got to protect your word like a womb. Don't let just anyone speak into it. Don't let doubt speak over it. Don't let disappointment abort it. Carry it until it grows. Protect it until it's ready. Let God work on it in the dark. Because when the time is right, what He's doing in you will speak for itself. And the very people who didn't understand your silence will be silenced by your fulfillment. There's a reason God told Zechariah to be silent until John was born. He doubted, he questioned, and God said, "You're not going to speak until the promise is fulfilled." Why? Because sometimes our mouths speak against what God is doing before our hearts have had time to catch up. Sometimes silence is a mercy, a way to keep us from cursing what we're supposed to be carrying. Don't sabotage your promise with careless words. Don't speak from frustration and call it faith. Let God grow your character in the quiet while He builds your promise in the background. You don't have to convince anybody. You don't have to explain every delay. You don't have to fight for understanding. Let your life do the talking. Let the fruit speak. Let the promise unfold, and when it does, it will say what your words never could. That God is faithful, that His timing is perfect, and that what He said in the dark was always destined to be seen in the light. There's a quiet confidence rising in you this July, a maturity that says, "I no longer need to prove myself. I don't need everyone to understand. I don't even need to know every detail. I just need to trust Him." Because when you stop announcing and start abiding, things begin to shift. Heaven begins to move, favor begins to find you, and suddenly what was once just a whisper in your heart becomes a visible testimony for all to see. Your silence isn't weakness, it's warfare, it's strategy. It's alignment and it's sacred. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep holding the promise close, because in just a little while, what you've been carrying in secret will be birthed in public. And everyone who doubted, everyone who questioned, everyone who watched you wait in silence, they'll see the fulfillment, and they'll know it wasn't you, it was God. All along it was Him. And so now, as we stand in this divine moment, let us remember, indication is not a matter of proving others wrong, but of proving that God was right to trust you with the process. This July is not just another month, it is a prophetic window. A season where the quiet seeds you've sown in faith will begin to break the soil, a time when heaven says, "Enough of the delay. I will now honor what you endured in silence." You didn't quit when you had every reason to. You didn't fight dirty when you were falsely accused. You didn't retaliate when you were rejected. You chose integrity over impulse. You chose worship over worry. And now God is saying, "Watch me respond. Watch me lift you without explanation. Watch me reward what was done in secret. Watch me prepare the table, set the scene, and silence every voice that rose against you, not with vengeance, but with undeniable favor." So walk boldly into this month with your head high and your spirit at peace. You don't need to chase vindication. God is bringing it to you, not through pride, not through revenge, but through promotion, peace, and fulfillment. Be still, be faithful, and be ready. Your vindication is not coming. It has already begun. July belongs to the faithful, and that means it belongs to you.